Hi everyone, this is Amanda of amandaellis.co.uk, Facebook page Angelic Celestial Colours, and you're watching me on YouTube, Amanda Ellis 11. Welcome. Thank you for all of those who've watched me before. Welcome to those that might be new to my channel. I channel Archangel Metatron and Sandalphon and other Ascended Master energies. I'm a colour therapist, a spiritual teacher and a healer, and I'm the founder of a system called Metatron Colour Healing, made up of some wonderful colour sprays. And from time to time I like to do a video like I'm about to do, which is a question and answer channeling video. I haven't done one for a while actually, and it was prompted this morning by Metatron, who asked me to make one today about the nature of evil in our world. And it's been prompted by the death of Brady, a mass murderer. I'll come back to that in a moment. And certainly in the UK it's a talking point today. And so I'm going to address the nature of evil in our world, what we can learn from it, how does it serve us. And that might sound a strange question, but you'll start to understand that actually it can in some way. The second question I want to look at is related to karma. We're living in times where karma is playing out big time at the moment for most of us. So we're going to ask Archangel Metatron about karma. I've got a great question in front of me to read out to you from one of you. And the third question is relating in fact I've got the question in front of me here. It says, hi there, I notice you channel Metatron frequently. Does Metatron have humans representing his energy currently on Earth? Is anyone made of the energy of his being? Are we sparks of that energy? Thanks so much. Thought that was a really good question. And we can apply that of course to any Ascended Master energy. So we're going to look at that as well. I might break this video up into 2 or 3 parts. We'll see how we go. It depends how much Metatron's got to say with regard to every question. So let's get going. I'm just going to spray around myself. I've already sort of prepared myself energetically, but I'm just spraying the orange attunement and connection spray. And I'm also breathing in the spiritual protection spray. Working with Metatron keeps you pretty safe anyway, but I think as we're talking about a subject such as evil, we will put it around us anyway. So we know only the highest vibrational truths and energy can be with us at this time, because Metatron's saying to me there is nothing to fear from talking about this subject. Okay. Okay, so as I say, prompted this morning by the death of this man last night in the UK called Brady. Now, wherever you're watching in the world, I'm sure whatever country you're watching in, there will probably be a couple of cases that are culturally or nationally specific to you, that have stayed in the country's psyche, a bit like an open wound that's never really properly healed. And every generation has one of these cases, unfortunately. And one of the ones in the UK is what's known as the Moors murderers. There were 2 of them. Brady was one, Myra Hindley the second. They both were found guilty in the 1960s of the murder and torture of children. And Brady died last night, really taking his secrets to the grave in terms of where some of the children were that had been killed. So never gave closure in this lifetime to the bereaved families, never showed any degree of remorse. Indeed, seemed to get pleasure from keeping secrets to himself, and probably pleasure from what he did in the first place. So it's really hard for us as loving human beings to understand that behaviour. And it is also part of human nature sometimes that when an ending comes, as in the death of the perpetuator in this case, that it's almost like the nation can breathe a sigh of relief, box it all up, makes us feel a bit better to say, unkind things towards him. You know, most of the papers today are leading with the headline "Rot in Hell, Burn in Hell," and as a human level you can understand that, but at a higher spiritual perspective we've got to go a bit deeper than that and actually try and understand why things like this happen in our world, what purpose they serve, and why a man such as he comes into our world, and what is going on there in terms of soul contract, what has happened to make somebody behave in that way, and then what can we learn from that as a community. Okay, so I've already got some information that's come through already from Metatron, because I started to make this video and then my battery gave out, so I'm re-recording it. So the first bit probably is going to be quite fluid and flowing, and then as I get into the bits that I haven't got to, there may well be some pauses and gaps as I just breathe and consider the next piece of the information to come. So the first image that I was shown when I asked about the nature of evil in our world was Metatron showed me a candle flame. Okay, I'm just going to light this candle flame, and actually it seems appropriate to light it also in memory of his victims as well. Okay, but if we look at that candle flame, Metatron was saying to me that if you take the image of a candle flame set against a dark background, a dark sky, a dark room, and you imagine that the dark sky or the dark room is symbolic of maybe an evil deed or an act of wrongdoing, what you actually tend to fixate on and really notice, the thing that remains above all else, is actually the light rather than the darkness around it. And he's saying that darkness actually illuminates light the best of all. And that's true, isn't it? If you look at my little candle flame here in my room where I've lit it, there's obviously quite a lot of light around me. It's not dark. We haven't got sunlight coming in, but we've got lots of daylight coming in. And although you can see the candle flame, it doesn't look particularly significant. If I was making this at night time and there was darkness around me, that light, that flame would be the only thing that you would really be able to see properly. And it would stand out all the more for the darkness that is around it. And so that's the symbol, really, that in the darkest times, the darkest deeds, the darkest people sometimes that come into our world and create havoc and evil, it gives an opportunity for the light to shine brightest by a reaction against that deed. Okay, which is why you always hear about people that come out and are, you know, heroes or rescuers or do amazing things in times of real difficulty. You know, things like, for example, the Moors murderers, the community would have come together, and there would have been an outpouring of love for those that died, for those that were affected, and so that can be a positive that comes from it. Metatron then proceeded to talk to me about how every person comes into the world with a divine spark within them, because we are all part of the divine and we're all born with that divine spark. But we come into the world and the world is one of duality, and duality is to do with extremes, differences, opposites. And one of the most notable examples of duality is the opposites of innocence, purity and goodness set against evil, wrongdoing and darkness. And they are there as two different extremes, but they exist within or on the same spectrum. And that spectrum is called life, okay? Human life, not divine life, human life. Human life, admittedly, that has that divine spark, and that divine spark within it can choose to either go towards the light and the purity and the innocence, or it can choose to go more towards the darkness. And the darkest darkness is where evil can exist, and darkness breeds that evil. And darkness is the absence of love, it's the absence of light, it's the absence of wisdom, it's the absence of the connection to the divine. And so some people come in and are just instinctively drawn to this other route, this darker route. And what Metatron is saying is that we as human beings like to wrap things up in neat little boxes to make sense of something in the 70 that we traditionally are alive for. I know most of us are alive for a bit longer than that now, but you know, we like to have a neat little life. We like to understand what's good, what's bad, and we like to see the comeuppance in this lifetime for those that step out of line. But it isn't that simple, because the whole meaning of life is misunderstood, because life isn't just about those 70, the 70 years, the 80 years, the 90 years that you're alive on this planet. Life is actually about eternal life. And if you think about eternal life, you, I, somebody like Brady, is somebody that has lived other lifetimes before and will live other lifetimes in the future. And what Metatron is asking us to consider is a soul that comes into the world that reacts in such a evil, concentrated way as somebody like that. Sometimes it's obvious what's created it in this lifetime, maybe a very terrible, traumatic childhood. Doesn't mean if you have a terrible, traumatic childhood, of course, that you're going to become evil. Most people don't. But some people might become the abuser. You know, it's the abused that becomes the abuser. But equally, sometimes those that come in who commit terrible, terrible things have come in damaged before birth. And this isn't physical damage in terms of, I don't know, missing limb or something. It's actually a missing fragment of soul, effectively, you know? It's something that's happened. It's a deep, deep soul wound that has happened in a previous life that has made the person angry, frustrated, out for retribution. Now, a soul is never allowed back onto the earth plane to just commit retribution, because souls are sent back here to learn and to make better. But again, let's go back to the spectrum. The soul comes in who might be damaged to start with, who has had, I don't know what happened to them in previous lives. Maybe they've been the one that's been murdered. Maybe they've been the one that's been abused. Maybe they've been the one that's been shunned from society. I've no idea. The stories are so complex and so deep. And they come in and they're ready to give it another crack, you know, that they want to make a go of it. They want this time for it to be better. But yet they haven't done any of the work up above, wherever we go, into the other realms. And it's not that they're not ready, it's that the divine always sees the highest potential in everybody. So the divine wants to believe that the soul coming back wants to make amends. The soul coming back might believe that, but then they arrive and they are faced with the reality that we have good and we have evil on the planet. And it's like Metatron is saying, it's like an old pattern gets re-established. That is easier to go back to than this, okay? It's easier to go back into a past pattern because you can still see it's playing out here than change, okay? So that can come into it. The other thing Metatron is talking to us about is he asks me to write this word down for you. Okay, so I'm just going to write down, hope you can see that, the word evil, okay? So that's what we're dealing with, how to understand evil. Why is it around? Why is it here? What can we learn from it? And he's saying, look at those 4 letters, E-V-I-L. And he's saying, if you change the order of those letters, they become the word live. So live, living, being alive is within the word evil. So within life itself, evil exists and will always exist because we live in a world of duality. But evil is also the opposite of basically being alive, of living your life, okay? In a way, evil is death. Evil is about not living life. It's about dying inside. And so I think it's quite interesting that the word live, and the word evil are made up of the same letters, okay? And then he says to me that actually, of course, if we change one letter, just one letter, we change the whole energy. And the letter that we need to take out, or the energy that we need to take out, is I. And if we replace I with an O, we get the word love, okay? We get the word love. So, and love, of course, is the opposite to hatred, is the opposite to evil. Taking out the word I, though, feels important. This is all symbolic, it's all metaphoric. You know, he's just trying to illustrate something here, because he's saying if you take I out of the equation, I equates to the ego. It relates to my will, okay? My will, I. It is the opposite to the divine aspect that we have. And I is separate from the divine, it's separate from God, okay? So, and it's when we are separate from God, when we just completely are in, you know, our own zone, and only our own zone, and only our own ego, and only our own shadow, that we run into trouble. I pulled a couple of cards. I didn't know if it was going to work or not with regard to Brady, you know, somebody like Brady, and he's just an example, because there are many Ian Bradys, sadly, in this world. We're just using him as an example. And I didn't even know if the angel cards would be able to answer it, because angel cards by nature are light, and they tend to have very positive messages. But I've got this new deck of cards, which is the, can't even remember what it's called now. It's the new deck by Tony Carmine Salerno. I'll put it in the box below. And two cards fell out very, very easily, and they are these two. One is the card of depression, and the other is the card of confusion, okay? Depression and confusion. Now again, I am not saying, and Metatron is not saying, that if you are depressed and if you are confused, you end up doing terrible things and becoming evil. Again, that's the human construct that wants to put things into neat little boxes, that this is the way things are. If you do this, you get this. If you do that, you get that. It's not that simple. In certain people, with certain predispositions, with certain past baggage, whether in this life or previous lives, that has not been healed, and with the right environmental factors, dysfunctional environmental factors, evil can come to the fore. Before we look at these two cards, which are more specific for Brady, they can also come to the fore, of course, from cultural acceptance. If you look at the rise of Nazism within the 1930s, 1940s, it became culturally acceptable to shun certain groups of society, the Jews, to make them outcasts. It led ultimately to huge evil in our world, which is still an open wound that hasn't been properly healed yet. But it became a cultural norm that it was okay to behave in a certain way. Within individual and not sort of collective energies, there tends to be something at play that's caused it. Somebody that is basically happy, somebody that is basically content, somebody that is basically loved, I want to say, somebody that feels as though they have been loved and accepted, does not commit the crimes of evil that we see in our world today. And these two cards that I've got here, and this doesn't mean if you pick these two cards, by the way, it's always going to be this meaning. I'm just intuitively reading them here. Feel quite telling
we've got the card of depression, but over and above depression, what's often been said to me about depression is there is a lot of train of thought which says that depression is actually suppressed anger, okay? It's one aspect of depression. It can be deeply, deeply suppressed anger and frustration that has never been expressed. Can you look at that face there? Can you see the redness, and red, of course, is the energy of anger and frustration. So we've got an angry, frustrated, depressed soul. We've then got confusion, complete confusion, landing here on earth, having no understanding of how the hell to heal the past, and probably not even having the right people in the environment to help you do that. The third card I pulled might seem a strange one, but I'm going to explain it. I've got the Ace of Angels and it says wisdom. Now, somebody like Brady obviously was not wise. He didn't have that divine wisdom within him. But what he actually had, and I believe I'm correct in saying this, is that he was quite mentally bright, okay? He was quite intelligent. And by that, I mean he read copiously, he studied, he was learned in that sense. But there is a difference between being knowledgeable and being wise. And again, to be wise means you have to be connected into your divinity. You have to be connected into that divine source, which in somebody that is evil does not exist. It is separate from that. The headlines along the lines of burn in hell, rot in hell. Again, there is a hell that can exist here upon this earth. I don't actually believe in the fiery pit and the hell that is depicted, particularly in the Old Testament. It has never felt right to me. For me, hell, whether it is in this life or whether it is in the afterlife, is to do with being separate from the divine. It's being separate from God. And when you are committing evil, you are as far removed from godliness, from innocence, from love, from light as you can possibly be. You've gone right to the other side of the spectrum, almost to the point of falling off, but you haven't fallen off because it's still within that spectrum of life, okay? Dualistic, earthly life. Metatron is saying as well, it was a question that came up actually on my Facebook page today when I said I was going to do these videos. One of you mentioned, and thank you for your comments, that you felt that maybe Brady, would be confronted by the children again in the afterlife. I guess that almost feels a bit like penance, you know, that you would have to recognise what you've done. And my guidance on that is I'm getting a big no to that. And the reason for that is that a loving God wouldn't put a I'm saying a child, but of course we're talking souls here, a soul through anything that it didn't want to actually do. I'm not talking about Brady here, I'm talking about the victims. So what you have to understand is that if you've been a victim of a crime in this life, a victim of evil, and you pass over, there is a lot of help available to you to help you heal. But you would never be pushed to have to confront your attacker again unless you wanted that. So the power of choice in that matter would lie with the child, not with the person who's committed the crime, okay? But again, and I know this is very controversial to say, it's very apparent that often that the victim and perpetuator, please hear me here, at soul level, kind of made an agreement before they come to the earth plane to play out an act such as this. And at human 3D level, that sounds complete and utter madness. Why would anybody ever do that? Why would anybody ever agree to come down to earth and to be killed or to be murdered? But in the greater scheme of things, again, we've got to go back to the eternalness. For that soul that chooses to be the victim in this lifetime, that represents a tiny, tiny, less than 1% percentage of their eternal life. Probably doesn't even make up 1%. It's nothing. This is what Metatron is trying to convey to us. Stop trying to box things in to understanding and everything being wrapped up and understood in one life. You are not going to understand it. You can only make sense of things, and the big things like good and evil, by seeing it over the course of eternity, by seeing it over the course of a soul that comes back and might come back again and then comes back again, and it just goes on and on and on. And over the course of many, many, many lifetimes, it starts to balance itself out, okay? So that's very, very hard to hear. I understand that. And the first time I was sort of led to that teaching, which really is sometimes that the one that bullies or abuses or hurts us the most is actually at soul level the one that has put their hand up and said, I will be that person in this lifetime that will take the flak, that will go to prison, that will do this, that will do that. I will do that because you actually need to experience that particular thing. Because in the great scheme of things, all of us will have been everything. Every aspect of human emotion, every aspect of human creation, the good stuff, the bad stuff. Over the course of eternity, we will have done it all. And that's challenging because we like to sit in our arrogance sometimes and just like to think about all the good lives we've had, you know, and this life that we're living now and how much difference we're making and how I would never do that. I would never treat somebody like that. Well, hold on a minute. What about 3 lifetimes back when you were the person that was behaving absolutely appallingly? And you were the person who may well have been possibly able to do very bad deeds in themselves. We're getting into the sort of past life area here, but it has to come through and it has to be talked about. I remember, I've only had a few past life sessions myself, but I do remember the first time I did it, I made the mistake of falling into the trap of ego. And, you know, I've said this in workshops before, I imagined, and it was imagining because it wasn't actually a real memory. I sort of imagined that I was some princess in a, you know, tower thing in India, and it was all very lovely, you know, this beautiful palace and jewels and a bit like a Princess Di type lifetime, although with a happy ending. And then I like snapped myself out of it. I thought, hold on, is that really true? Does that really feel right? And so I asked to go back in and be shown really, you know, some other lives that actually happened. And both of them were lifetimes which I was not necessarily shocked by, but I certainly hadn't expected. One was a Roman lifetime where I had been a Roman soldier who had been guilty of, you know, going into battle, killing people, did so against my will because I was following orders, couldn't live with myself, and turned to drink actually in that particular lifetime as a way to just try and forget the deeds that I'd done. I haven't been shown any other lifetimes yet where it was worse than that in terms of something I did, but I strongly suspect that myself and probably a lot of you that are watching this who are spiritual teachers or healers or who are here to serve in some way now, and hopefully we're doing it from the right place and from the right heart, but I suspect many of us have had lifetimes where we have abused our power in some way, you know, and so therefore we're coming back and we've really got to get it right this time, okay? So I feel like I'm deviating a bit from the point, but I'm not really, because it's to do with recognizing good acts and evil acts through a past life lens, you know, and realizing that who we're judging in this life, we may well, not necessarily we've tortured or murdered children, but we may well have done things that are equally horrific, even if it's going back to the medieval ages, you know, or the Stone Age. I've no idea how long ago we're talking, but at some point in line you will have done that, because it's part of the experience of the soul wanting to come back. And we're back to this word, live. And live isn't just about, okay, I'm going to live and I'm only going to want to experience the really nice fluffy bits. living actually can be also about the messy bits, okay? The difficult bits, the challenging bits, the ugly bits. And so in this lifetime, we need to understand that. Okay, I'm going to see if there's another message here now with regard to understanding evil and any other message that I need here. Metatron, just to bring through, please. Let me just spray this one more time. He is saying evil is a necessary reminder from time to time for us to reaffirm what it is that we actually believe, what it is that is actually right. You need the contrast sometimes for a community or for an individual to come together and say, hold on, this is wrong, okay? This is wrong. Okay, that's the first thing. See anything else that comes through. It serves no good to anybody to be attracted into the darkness. And by that what I mean is that the media like to sensationalize, like to go over and over and over details of awful things that have happened. And by doing that, you are lowering your vibration by even watching a program on that. Or reading about it, okay? So don't do that. He's talking about, even though I've just said that to you, that we all often have within us as well a memory of being the people who would have been the ones watching an execution, okay? So I can't remember what lifetime that would have been. It's not medieval ages, it's probably a bit further on than that. But it's the people that were in Rome, in the what's it called? Not the auditorium. You'll tell me, because I know you're very good at telling me after I can't remember something. Oh, I've been there. Anyway, you know what I mean. Where the gladiators used to be, and the lions came out, and the persecution of the Christians, and there were people there that would have been cheering and watching that and enjoying the blood sport of that. In the same way that certainly in the UK and probably in other countries as well, people used to turn out to watch the hangings and the beheadings. And to us now, it just seems completely gross. Why would anybody do that? But they did. And I'm saying they did. But the thing is, we did. And so we need to heal ourselves of that compulsion to be attracted. Again, I'm going back to these two extremes, to be attracted back to the dark, okay? Always keep again, back to this single candle flame. Remember to fixate on the light, not the darkness. We need to understand the darkness, which is the whole purpose of why this video has been made, but we mustn't get consumed by it, okay? And we mustn't judge it, because in judging it, we are denying the parts of ourself, whether this lifetime, whether previous lifetimes, where we have done wrong as well. On a scale of 1 to 10, it might not be to the same degree as somebody like Brady, but we will have done something which has hurt another, whether physically, emotionally, or mentally, in a pretty bad way in terms of this spectrum. And hi, me again. Sorry, I've got a problem with battery life today. So it's not a seamless video, apologies, but hey, hopefully the information is proving interesting. I just wanted to finish off, having taken a little break and reviewed what I've said before. Actually, the last thing I want to say is prompted by the sound of my daughter, who I could hear on just the end bit of that video. She was coming in from school, and she does this thing where she pretends to be an opera singer, and I could hear her lovely little voice on the video. Hope that comes through actually. And as I listened back and I heard that, I heard Metatron say to me, the other really important thing that we haven't acknowledged is that if you think about somebody like Brady, who's basically been in prison, incarcerated for the last 45 years or so. Okay, so he's been in a prison cell, he hasn't had his freedom, and he's been punished in that way in this life. Those are the rules of the UK. We don't put people to death, we incarcerate them in prison. The souls of the children that were killed, I'm being told that at least one of them already has reincarnated and has had at least 30-40 years of wonderful life in a new body, in a new situation, with a new family. And I just think that's rather lovely, because I've never thought about that before, that probably does happen, but actually it makes complete sense. So that the one who committed the crime gets locked away and isn't able to live their life, or certainly not live a quality life here on the earth plane. But yet the one that has been killed or murdered has been set free from this life. But then often, particularly when they're young and they're children, they can come back very quickly if they want to then re-experience something, another completely different dimension, another different reality in this life, and probably a much more healthy and happy one. As that information came through, I was thinking to myself, oh, but you know, then what about the mothers who might die, who are expecting to see the children at the end? And I'm being told, and this is it's really hard to get your head around, but Metatron is saying we don't understand the how timelines play out, because as weird as it sounds and as impossible as it sounds, in that scenario, a mother or a father could pass over expecting to see the child that they had lost, and that can be happening at the same time as the child having been reincarnated and living another lifetime back here now in 2017. And I know that's like, whoa, hold on, I can't get my head around that at all, but that is what I'm being told. And I sort of know that to be true as well in my own life, just in a very different way, which was like a lot of women. I miscarried a child in between my two girls, and I've always sensed this boy's energy around me, and I know he's around me still. He comes on anniversaries and makes his presence known. But I've also been told and I know this within my own guidance as well, that because he didn't come to me and into my family, he actually then went to somebody else and is being brought up in America. So that again makes no sense at one level of consciousness. But if you can raise your consciousness and think outside the box, it's actually completely feasible, because timelines merge and we are all actually living many different realities. And that's probably the subject for a whole other channeling session. Because this video has gone on for the length it has, I'm going to break it in a minute, and I'm going to come back to the other two questions that I talked about at the start of this video in a separate video, but I feel it's important to get this one out today. So I'm just going to close it, and I'm just going to see if there's anything else, any last point that Metatron wants me to bring through for you with regard to this question of evil. Don't be afraid by it. And he's saying he knows that's hard. That's a hard thing to ask of us, to not be afraid. But he's just wanting us to know that the power of light and the power of love and the laws of karma that we're coming into with regard to the next video that I'm about to make help to balance everything. He's saying that the universe is actually a balanced place. Yeah. Just see if there's anything else. To remind our children as well that there are more good people in the world than bad. It's something I say to my girls all the time. And it's very, very important that we remember that always. Do not let the darkness define you. Let the light illuminate you. Do not let the darkness define you. let the light illuminate you. Rest in peace to all victims. Much love. Namaste.